Love God and love neighbor. Greatest commandment. And I think we have a pretty good sense or understanding that of love of neighbor, that we ought to love our neighbor and be good to them. But I want to talk today about loving God. That's sometimes a little harder, loving God. Because at some days God can seem less personal and more like an abstract idea. So I want to talk about loving God. First of all, I want to name sort of two conceptions of God that exist in our modern scientific age, in our world today, that often can be hindrances for us, I think, in loving God. The first is sort of the predominant idea in some people that, well, frankly, there is no God. That the creative force that brought us into being is but a happenstance of various, physical forces and compilations of molecules and so on, arrangements of matter, that happen to result in us being here now. And therefore, since we can explain all the accumulation and unfolding of these various physical and forces of matter, there's no need for a God. And obviously, it makes it hard to have anyone to love if there's the forces that created us are just this impersonal thing, this impersonal, unintelligent thing, but rather just a happenstance of forces. Some try to explain it away with the Big Bang Theory. The Big Bang Theory explains everything, so why do we need God? To this, I think it's worth pointing out that actually the Big Bang Theory, the first person who proposed that was in fact a Catholic priest, a Belgian priest, Father George Lemaitre, from Belgium, as I said. He's the one who proposed the Big Bang Theory. So far being from anything to try and explain away the existence of God, he rather saw it as flowing from, is just simply trying to understand this wondrous world, this wondrous universe that God has created. So certainly as Catholics, we're not opposed to science and mathematics by any means. In fact, we can use them to measure, the world, and we should engage with and study the wondrous and magnificent world that God created. But science becomes no longer science when it starts to make claims about the existence of God. It's the wrong tool. When people make science from science and try to make claims about God's existence, it's kind of like using a kitchen thermometer to tell you how much water is in the pot. It's the wrong tool for the wrong thing. Now, we're very open to science as Catholics, and we can and should engage with that. But we would say that all the forces that created, yes, we acknowledge there's different physical forces, but behind it all, there's a personal being and an intelligence. Another obstacle can be sort of what we might call the agnostic view that's also prevalent in our culture and society. That maybe, yes, one may grant that maybe there's some intelligent creator behind it all, but there's no way we can possibly come to know anything about this intelligent creator. That this intelligent God, this God, if there is one, is sort of like the horizon. It's kind of this idea in the distance that we can never ever reach or get to. Sort of the agnostic view. But as Christians, we also don't believe that. We believe that it's a personal and intelligent force behind it all, that is an almighty, all-powerful God, but that we can know something about them precisely because God reveals himself. God speaks to us. You see, when you're getting to know a person, sure, you can arrive at things about them by simply observing them, applying your reason. But there's aspects to who they are we can never know until we personally engage with them, until they tell us, until they reveal themselves to us. It's like the difference of studying someone in history, like an Abraham Lincoln, that we can get to know something about, we can never really know as a friend. As different then, as I said, knowing an intimate friend who we engage with, who speaks, who shares their heart with us. And so this is precisely who God is. Yes, he's the almighty, all-powerful, infinite, eternal source of all existence and all being, the uncreated creator, the unmoved mover, the first cause of all things. And we can maybe arrive at something about him by applying our reason. But this God also isn't just a clockmaker God who sort of set the world in motion and then sort of sits back, but he actively engages in the story of history, in the story of a time, in our story. And he does that by revealing himself, making himself known. And that's what we call revelation. He reveals himself. And a portion of that revelation is written down into what we call the Bible. But the height then of that revelation is him revealing himself more fully by fully entering into the story, this God outside of time and space, entering into time and space in the person of Jesus Christ. To reveal himself, to make himself known, to speak the living word into the world. So when we move from an impersonal creative force to this God who engages in time and reveals himself to us, we start to overcome some of those obstacles in loving God. Okay, Father Kevin, that's all nice philosophy. But practically, how do I love God? So I'll conclude with this. 3 words to help us to love God: gratitude, goodness, and engagement. Gratitude, goodness, and engagement. First of all, gratitude. I've said before, and I'm sure I will say again in the future, everything we have and are is sheer, total, undeserved gift from God. Everything I have and am is sheer, total, undeserved gift from God. And so I owe it to simply give thanks. That I live rightly in the world when I live with that disposition and attitude that all I have and am is sheer, total, undeserved gift. And so part of the reason we should come to Mass week after week and engage in daily prayer is, especially Sunday Mass, is within the cycle of my life every week to fall to my knees and give thanks. I even exist, that I have life, that all the blessings of my life ultimately are only because God gave me life. And he gave me the skills I have and gave me the people around me in my life and the circumstances to cultivate and hone those skills. So even in my personal achievements, sure, there was some of my own effort involved, but only made possible because of the God who loved us into existence. So to live with that gratitude, that sort of puts everything in its right perspective and helps me to begin to love the giver of all these gifts when I fall to my knees in the humble, wondrous gratitude. Secondly, goodness. That if everything I have and am, including my life and my existence, is sheer, total, undeserved gift from God, and I got this life to live, then part of my gift back to God is to live my life well. And to strive to live into the goodness that he calls us to live in the way he asks us to live. St. Irenaeus, an early Christian writer, has this quote that the glory of God is humanity fully alive. The glory of God is man fully alive. And that's it. It's to live our life in its fullness. Now, understanding, of course, what that means properly. Some people think that just means, well, I can just do whatever I want and have fun. But to live in the way God calls us to live. Because in that we will find actually deeper joy than simply the passing pleasures of this world. To live our life recognizing the gift we have, and so to be stewards of the gift that is my life. And to live into goodness as much as I can. And part of that flowing from gratitude, that if all I have is blessing from God, then how do I use that gift also to be a blessing unto others? So gratitude, goodness, and lastly, engagement. As I said, God is not merely an impersonal creative force, but the living God who speaks, who's active in my life here and now. And so to engage with him, to talk to him, to share with him what's in my heart. Yes, God already knows what's in your heart, but we have the freedom to engage in that relationship and then to open ourselves up to the guidance of his Spirit speaking back. To engage with God in a personal way. Yes, to praise and worship him, especially in that gratitude, as I said, and thanksgiving that all we have is gift. But also to ask him for guidance, to live into the goodness we've called, to live our lives well, to help us to love others, to draw upon him who is the source of all our strength. And as we said in the psalm today, I love you, Lord, who are my strength. So to, in fact, engage with him in a personal way, to share what's in our heart, to receive him, to be, to gift my heart to God. It's this exchange of persons. That's where we talk about how God makes covenants with us. Whereas a contract is an exchange of goods, a covenant is exchange of persons, self-gift. God has overwhelmingly gifted himself to me, and so I strive to gift myself to God. Gratitude, goodness, and engagement. If I do these things, they can help us to love God more deeply and fully. What is the greatest commandment? To love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself.